I'm Kelly with DNNDev.com, back with another how-to video for XMod Pro. This one was prompted by a post in our forums. Pat asks, is there a way within XMod Pro to select values from a table into an array? While the type of array wasn't specified, I'm assuming Pat meant a JavaScript array. I figured, why bother typing it out when I can show you how to do it? So for this example, we'll be working with the same authors table I often use for demonstrations. It simply returns the author ID and the author's first and last names. Our task is to gather that information up into a JavaScript array. Now you may be asking yourself, why would I want to do this? Pat didn't specify a purpose, but to give you some examples, you may use it to populate a drop-down list or to pop up an inline more information window. I'll show you how to make the array. What you do with it is up to you. And I'll take it one step further to create a JavaScript object for each author record and place that in a JavaScript array. This makes it easier to work with the column information for each author, since each column will be a property of an author object. There won't be a lot of eye candy in this one. We're just going to be dealing with JavaScript here. So let's get started. First of all, in our template, we have created a very simple template. It doesn't display anything right now. It simply has a list data source, and the command text is set to retrieve the author ID, first name, and last name from the author's table. Now the first thing I want you to do if you're following along is set use paging to false. Often that is the default value is often true for most XMod Pro tools that are generating a template for you. So make sure you set that to false. The reason I do that is because typically if you're loading data into a JavaScript array, you probably want all of the data. You don't want just the first page of data. But if you do, then go ahead and set paging to true. Now before I continue, I want to briefly cover the basic structure of an XMod Pro template. It's basically broken into three sections. You have your header template. This is rendered once for every template tag, and it's rendered at the beginning of your list of records. The item template is rendered once for each record that you have in your results set. And the footer template is rendered once at the end of your list of results. This kind of setup is not only good for displaying records, but it's excellent for creating HTML tags, and that's what we're going to do. We're just going to create a JavaScript or an HTML script tag in which we place in JavaScript. So let's do that. I'm going to put my opening script tag here at the top in the header template. It'll be type equals text / JavaScript. And for good practice, whenever I open a tag, I always close it. So I'm going to go down to the footer tag and close my script tag. Next, I want to go back up to the header template and define my array. I want to assign it to a variable. So I'll put in var our authors equals new array. And then in the item template, I simply want to push my items onto that array. And that is done simply by typing in our authors.push. And that's the basic syntax. Of course, we want to put some information in that item in the array, so we'll use one of our field tokens. We'll put in author ID. Now let's go ahead and save this and take a look, see what happens. We won't see anything visibly here in the page. We need to go use Firebug or some similar tool to look at the HTML source code. I'll click on HTML here, and it's already highlighted for us. You can see we have our script tag injected into the page, and our declaration of our array is here on this first line, followed by a series of lines where we're pushing records into that array. And then finally our closing script tag is right here. Let's go back and make this a bit more interesting. If you wanted to know how to create an array using XMod Pro, you now know how to do that, by the way. So if you don't want to hear me ramble anymore, then feel free to turn off the video and go do something more productive. Anyway, if you want to stick with me, then let's go ahead and do some more stuff here. We're going to start out by creating an object, a JavaScript object for each of our records. That'll make it easier to deal with in your client-side script. The way the objects are created, basically you have an opening and a closing curly brace, and everything in that defines your object. Properties on your object are defined with the name of the property, in this case ID, and then you follow that with a colon. After that, you want to put in the value of that property. In our case, that's going to be the author ID field. Now, if you want to add another property, you add a column or a comma, and then type in the property name again. So we'll call this next property first name. colon, and then the first name field value will be here. One more column, or comma, and we'll type in last name, colon, last name. And that's all you have to do. Let's go ahead and save that and see what happens. If you look closely down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see that Firebug is reporting a JavaScript error. Let's take a look at that and see what it is. It says that we're missing a closing curly brace after the property list. Of course, you and I both know that I had an opening and closing curly brace, so that's not really the error that is happening. Let's take a look at the data, actually, and look at the last name property. You'll see that following the colon, the value is DE space WAAL. We know that to be a single last name for someone, but JavaScript doesn't know that because we need to actually specify this as a string. The way you do that in JavaScript is to surround your strings with either a single quote or double quote. Let's go ahead and do that now. The way you do that, simply just put a single quote around our field tokens for all of the string values. And we don't have to do that for author ID because that's simply a number. We'll save this and see what happens. We still have an error, and it looks like it's still the same error. But if you look at the data, you'll see that we're on a different record, and we're dealing with different data. Now the last name is O'Malley, and O'Malley is written with a single quote after the O right here. Of course, JavaScript is using a single quote to delimit its string values, so it's thinking that the last name ends after that capital O, and it doesn't know what to do with the Malley and the following single quote. We could solve this by putting in double quotes around it, but then we'd have the same problem if some of our data had double quotes in it. The best way around this is to use an XMod Pro tag called XMod Format. This allows us to format our data in multiple ways. You can do it with currency and text and all sorts of things, dates, but we're going to use the regex, or the regular expression formatting type of the XMod Format tag to replace our single quotes with escaped single quotes. In JavaScript, you escape a single quote by typing in a backslash and then a single quote, and that should work. The way we do this, we're going to assign our values to variables, so we'll set up a fname and an lname variable. You can do this however you want, but this is the way we'll do it in this case. And we need to assign our values in the item template. Notice I declared the variables in the header template because I don't want to redeclare them every time that a record is displayed. That would be wasteful of resources. So fname equals 2 single quotes. Now, what I'm going to do is going to be all processed on the server side, and that is going to be happening right in between these single quotes. So I don't want you to get confused as to what's happening. Between the single quotes is going to be processed on the server, and then the results will be processed by JavaScript here. So I'm just going to add some white space so we know what's what. I'm going to type in the XMod Format tag here. And the type of format is going to be regex. The value is the value that we're going to format, and this needs to be delimited with a single quote. Again, we're on the server side now. Since we're using a field token, we need to use a single quote delimiter. All right, and the pattern is the actual regular expression pattern, and don't worry, this is going to be very easy. Just a single quote is all we're looking for. None of the typical regex gobbledygook, just a single quote. Finally, the replacement property will tell XMod Pro what we want to replace that single quote with. In our case, we need to escape that single quote for JavaScript's purposes, and that's written as a backslash and a single quote, like that. All we have to do is close our tag and get rid of this extra white space that I added in there. And that's all we have to do. I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste it for the last name. Save a little typing. And we'll change this to lname. And the value will now be the last name, or the last name token. And that will take care of that bit of it. Finally, we need to change our line that is adding stuff to the array. to use not the strings, but the variables we just created. So first name will be lname, and last name will assign, whoops, I did that wrong, didn't I? Okay. So last name will be lname, and first name will be fname. There we go. Now we'll save and see what happens. Okay, let's look at the script that was generated. And you can see now that Bill and Bryson are being assigned to these variables, and they're being pushed onto our authors array. If we scroll down to our O'Malley record, down towards the bottom here, we'll see that the single quote in O'Malley has been escaped for us properly, and we're not getting any JavaScript errors anymore. So now that we have this fine object notation for each of our author records, how do we use it? I'll just show you quickly. We can go into the console and type in some JavaScript, and I'll show you. You just use the dot notation if you're not familiar with it. We'll just do a typical JavaScript alert here. We'll go our authors and use the index number in that array. 0 will be the first item in our array. Just use dot, and then we'll say first name. And hit enter. You can see Bill. That's Bill Bryson. If we can then add some more to it. Add a space here, and then the last name. And hit enter. Now we can see it's Bill Bryson. And our O'Malley record, I think that is index number 36, if I recall correctly. Yes, Brian Lee O'Malley. So that's it. That's how you use it, and that's how you create it. I hope you get a lot of value out of this tutorial, and of course, I hope you really get a lot of value out of using XMod Pro. I really appreciate your continued support of XMod Pro, and I will be back again with more video later on. Thanks.